Now, young people from working-class backgrounds are being excluded from jobs in elite firms. A report has found the Social Mobility and Child Poverty Commission has accused some firms of imposing a poshness test, which excludes recruits with parents who don't have the right sort of bank balance. The study of 13 companies found that 70% of job offers went to graduates who had been to fee-paying or selective state schools. Let's get the views of the Guardian columnist Owen Jones. I'm also joined by Josh Boyle from King's College Conservative Society. Very good afternoon to you both. So, Owen Jones, is this a big enough sample to be scientific? There's only 13 companies.
Well, I think if you look right across the board at the professions, not just companies, the fact my own profession, the media, over half of the top 100 journalists, according to a government study last August, are privately educated. We live in a country where only 7% of people go to a private school. That's the same, for example, with judges. Over 7 out of 10 judges are privately educated. And if you look right across both professions and key institutions at the top of society, disproportionately people are drawn from those backgrounds. And there's a few reasons for it. There is unpaid internships, so often people are expected to work for free for months with no promise of any job at the end of it, just to get their foot in the door. We can only really afford to do that if you can live off the bank of mum and dad. So you're discriminated against not on the basis of talent but wealth. Then also you've got these expensive qualifications people have to get after university. And then, as we've seen with this research, people being judged based on their accent and whether they've travelled across the world, which often only privileged people can do. That should concern all of us, wherever we stand on the political spectrum.
Let's see if it concerns Josh Boyle. I mean, as Owen's describing, this report is describing it, it seems we're getting further and further away from a truly meritocratic society rather than closer.
Well, I agree, actually. I personally do think it is a bit of a problem. I don't think that enough people from ordinary backgrounds, people who went to state schools, are getting top jobs. I myself was privately educated. I was very lucky. I look at, for example, my parents. They were both state educated. They were able to get themselves into a position where they could send me to a private school. I look now and it does feel a little bit like that's happening less than it was now. But I do think there are encouraging signs. Coming in the future. It does look now, particularly with the changes to tuition fees, and for example, more state school kids are going to university, and so I do hope that this is not deliberate on the part of these countries. My suspicion is it's probably more likely to be a kind of like a face fit. It's essentially how people work. If you're in a room with somebody and you're talking to them, if they're a bit like you, then you're more likely to get on with them. So if these companies are already full of privately educated people, they're probably more likely to hire people. That's something they need to work on, and there's certainly an awful lot more that we can do
there's that kind of cultural thing, isn't there, as well? That clustering effect the report describes. But Owen Jones, could it also be the sad fact, perhaps, I don't know if you agree with it or not, that by and large, sometimes the private schools are providing a better education, a better quality education than the state ones, and therefore the companies are just choosing the best candidates?
I don't buy that, actually. I mean, the OECD, which is obviously the international think tank, and their evidence suggests people from privileged backgrounds actually do better at state schools than they do at private schools. The huge gaps you see in educational attainment open up from day one, and it's to do often with your background. So, for example, there was this one study in Scotland that showed by the age of 5 years old, if you're born in an affluent background, your vocabulary is likely to be 18 months ahead of a child from a poorer background. And that's because you're being exposed to a broad vocabulary from a very early age. It's the same if you've got, for example, you grow up in an overcrowded house, and about 1 in 4 young Londoners grow up in that sort of home, and that has a huge impact on people's educational attainment as well. So I don't buy, actually, that point. And I do think, we shouldn't be segregating children by the bank balances of their parents. But when we're looking at the top of society, I don't buy the optimistic vision we've just heard there. Going to university is no guarantee of getting a professional job. A massive whack of recent graduates are doing non-graduate work, the sort of jobs they do anyway, even if they weren't saddled with huge amounts of debt. And if you get a situation where the privileged are selecting their own, that's very, very concerning, and it damages all of us. It damages society as a whole if it's not reflective.
Just want to bring Josh back there. And I want to throw into the debate for both of you, I suppose. This is an email I received just recently from a recruitment company, Purcell & Company, saying that I can tell you that the strenuous efforts made by professional services firms are such that actually being white, middle class and male are actually disadvantages, particularly at the graduate entry level. Diversity has become the most important factor in hiring decisions. I mean, Josh, this seems to rather fly in the face of the research.
It is true, particularly in the bigger companies, from what I gather, HR guidelines and so on mean, and compliance and so on, mean that they are under an awful lot more pressure internally than ever before to hire people from more diverse backgrounds. More than anything, it's actually good for business. There's a lot of stuff that shows that if you have people from diverse backgrounds, it improves decision-making, and it means that you're less likely to get the kind of groupthink that makes really disastrous decisions. Now,
I mean, but there isn't there, Owen? I mean, there is nothing to be done about this unconscious element that's being described, about, as we've been discussing there, the clustering, about like hiring like, and liking the idea that you've spent your gap year travelling around the world and things like that.
Well, I mean, it would help if we had more diverse people at the top, so then people selecting others to join a particular organisation are more likely to not have those sorts of prejudices. And that means abolishing unpaid internships. It means having scholarships to support people financially instead of expecting people to do these expensive postgraduate qualifications. It means taking on the massive inequalities that open up from day one, and that's to do with housing and poverty. And all the rest of it.
One thing that we ought to be doing is supporting third sector organisations, organisations like, for example, the Social Mobility Foundation, in a sort of mentoring role for ordinary kids, bright kids who are perfectly willing to do the work. Often they're willing to take these jobs. They really want these jobs. Often, perhaps they don't feel confident that they'll be able to get in, perhaps because of hearing stuff in the media like what we're hearing today. I mean, that can't help people if they're hearing that, oh, well, all the people who get these jobs are going to be posh people. You're not going to stand a chance. I think we really do need to encourage these people.
Hang on a minute.
We're not confidence. And just lastly, then, Owen Jones, quickly.
Well, hang on a minute. We're not going to deal with injustices unless we know what the scale of injustices are. We need to know what the scale of the problem is. And now we know the scale of the problem, and we know, as I said, all the evidence that those at the top, politics, media, law, fashion, whatever, are not representative of this country. And if it comes to the media, where journalists aren't representative of the people of this country, you end up with distorted coverage that doesn't reflect the reality of people's lives. So, as I say, let's deal with these big inequalities. Yes, let's build up people's confidence. There's a big role for that as well. But we're dealing with huge, massive inequalities that open up from day one. And unless we deal with those, these institutions are still going to look completely out of touch with the rest of society.
Gentlemen, thanks for your thoughts, both Josh Boyle, Owen Jones. Very good to talk to you.